All right, good morning, everyone. Happy 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. I've been waiting this day for a long time, actually. It's too bad I was not able to actually go to the battlefield on this historic anniversary, but I've been there a couple different times, and for anyone who's thinking of visiting either today or in the coming days or just ever, I figured this would be a good video just to kind of walk you through roughly how this Minuteman National Park actually works, and maybe some of the best ways to actually experience the park, because it's not actually the most intuitive way that it's kind of shaped and formatted, because the battle was kind of weird. This video will not be going too in-depth on the actual battle itself. Actually, I have another video that does that explicitly. I highly recommend you check out that video. I have it linked in the description, and it should be popping up right here as well if you're watching on a computer or a phone. So please go watch that. I spent a long time on that one, and it's one of my favorite videos that I've actually done. And I hope you enjoy it, but I also hope you enjoy this one too. So today we're going to be just retracing history a little bit, and I'm going to be showing footage of this as well as maps of how you should actually kind of go about doing this. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So quickly, just kind of an overview of the different locations you're going to actually see, or if you go on the National Park Service map, what you might see. You have Lexington Green over here, which is not part of the park complex. Then you have this big chunk, which is kind of like the Minuteman Road. Then you have another chunk here, which isn't really part of the battle. It's actually just like a historic house of some famous writer. Then here you have the Concord area, which is where the first real fighting starts. And then you have another exclave over here, which is Barrett's Farm, which was visited by the British, and it's the home of one of the first commanders for the Americans, but it's not actually where any fighting happened. So you're really just, if you're looking for fighting, you're going to look at Lexington, this long road here, and then Concord, and those are going to be the three that we're looking at today. Just keep in mind there are a couple other spots, but that's not where actual fighting happens. So first things first, the battle actually starts at Lexington Green, which is outside of Minuteman National Park. It's actually to the east a little bit. You're going to need a car to actually do this tour effectively. You could bike as well, but walking would probably take a very long time. The British had to walk this, and if you really wanted to get a sense of how the British felt, you could try walking it, but it's a long endeavor. They were not very happy campers that day. Just a brief overview of what happened, pretty much, and I have a whole video talking about this, so go check out that video. But pretty much what ends up happening is the British are out to seize weapons of war that they know are being stored in the town of Concord, Massachusetts. A detachment of redcoats then goes out, and before they're even able to get there, Paul Revere, along with many others, actually warns pretty much all the militia units within the Massachusetts countryside, and then by the time the redcoats get there, they're already facing these armed, ready militias. And the first confrontation happens at the first stop you want to take, which is at Lexington Green. So Lexington Green, again, is not in the park itself, but it is really where the Revolutionary War starts. It's just this triangular field right there. Next to it, there is a museum, so you can go in. There's a small museum. It's free to walk in, and it just pretty much shows a good kind of map overview of exactly what the battle may have looked like that day, who was involved, as well as there's various historic houses, like Buckman's Tavern is right there, which is where the militiamen were assembling before the battle, as well as the houses of some people who were actually killed in that battle right off of the square. It shows you roughly where the militia were standing, and the road that the British were on is actually just a modern road that you drive nowadays. So you can visit Lexington Green. That's really cool. Again, watch my video for all the details of the actual battle. Then you're going to actually want to drive west into Minuteman National Park, but you're not going to start at the park closest to you. You're actually going to stop about midway through. And this is actually the place where Paul Revere was captured. So before what was happening in Lexington happens, Paul Revere actually gets captured partway on his way to Concord, Massachusetts by the British. He's let go later in the night and kind of just walks the rest of his way there. But someone else, Samuel Prescott, who, fun fact, is actually an ancestor of the Bush family, is actually the one who goes to warn people on Concord. This does happen before Lexington Green in that battle. However, it's really annoying to like go there, then cut back to Lexington Green, and then keep cutting all the way back to Concord. So you can make this one first if you want to just be historically accurate, but it's a little inconvenient, admittedly. Then you're going to want to continue all the way down to the end of Minuteman National Park onto the west side. This is in the area of historic Concord. It's actually a little to the west of where the main downtown of Concord, Massachusetts is. And you can park here. There is a museum. It's on a hill, and you can't see that much on the hill, admittedly, but across the street there is actually just this regular old field, and this field is actually where the American militias were assembling to go and attack the British. And so there's this little footpath you can take, and it goes down the hill, and at first you don't see anything because it's covered in trees, but then it opens up and you see the bridge. And depending on the time of year you go, it can actually be really beautiful. When I went in the spring, for example, there was like lilacs everywhere. It was really, really nice. But this video you're seeing is from the fall, and it's a bit more dreary. So what you're looking at here, just to break this down, that bridge is Concord Bridge. That is where the shots heard round the world happened. That's not actually at Lexington, that is at Concord, and that is the river, the Concord River, that goes underneath that bridge. The bridge is not actually original. It was destroyed and then rebuilt later on. And there's also monuments here as well. And so when you're coming down the hill, when you get right up to the bridge, that's right about the point of view of the American soldiers. And then if you do the same thing on the other side, that's about the point of view of the British soldiers. Exactly what happens here, again, I have a video on this, go check that out. But long story short, a part of that British force is sent to guard that bridge from the Americans, and they see the American force coming. It's a lot bigger. They back off to their own side of the bridge, and then there's kind of this exchange of fire, and this is called the shots heard around the world because this is the first time that both sides actually fired on each other with orders, whereas at Lexington, it's kind of just the British fire and then the Americans kind of shoot back, but no Brits are really casualties, so it didn't really do anything. It was more like a massacre or an incident, I guess you could say. And then around kind of late morning, early afternoon, the British are staying in Concord and they start heading back east. So your next stop is actually going to be a place called Miriam's Corner. And from here, there is actually a walking path. So you could kind of, once you get to Miriam's Corner, you can really walk for a few miles as long as you're fine walking back to your car as well, or if you have a car parked on either end of the park. And from here on out, you can actually walk the path that the British actually walked at that time. So Miriam's Corner is important because that is the kind of first offensive operation that the militiamen end up conducting, and they actually ambush the British as they're kind of trying to close down in their formation a bit and cross a bridge, and they're especially vulnerable. And then for the rest of the time, it's a run and gun battle. So there's a few landmarks. I have not visited all of them, but I'll point them out here on the map. But you have a couple hills here. One of these hills, I have a video up here for it. The militia are on top of the hill, and the British actually go up the hill to try and attack them and push them off, and they do, but they take a lot of casualties, and so they cut their losses and keep going. Then there's this area, and you'll notice it in the trail, because it's in, a weird little hairpin turn, which is called the Bloody Angle, which is one of the more devastating parts of the fighting as well. And pretty much you can just imagine when you're walking through there, the Brits are getting fired on by all sides. And, of course, it's a hairpin turn, so they're like slowing down. And you can just imagine how crappy that would have been for the Brits. You can keep going, and there's, highs and lows, and it's not exactly one-to-one, but there is a bunch of historic houses and fences and such that are still there or have been rebuilt kind of for the historic authenticity. It is actually kind of a nice walk, just independent of all the history there. And so from here, you really just keep walking down the path, going all the way back east towards Boston, because again, the Brits were coming back towards Boston at this point. And there's all the signs will help you out, and there is on the National Park Service app, it's free. It shows you kind of the different landmarks as well. Again, I'll have these marked out on this video, and I talk about it more in my other video as well, so you know what actually happened during that battle. One of the other cool spots here is Parker's Revenge, and if you don't feel like walking this, you can, there's a road that goes alongside. You can just kind of like drive to the different locations as well. You don't have to walk the entire way. But Parker's Revenge is pretty cool because John Parker was the commander of the Lexington militias that are actually the first ones to get shot at, all the way back over in Lexington. And they come over and they shoot at the British again, and I actually got some videos not only of what that looked like from the British point of view, but what that looked like from the militia's point of view, kind of on this rock outcropping hill area, which is pretty cool as well. And you can just keep going all the way to the end of the park there. Interestingly, the fighting does still happen past this point. It's not as well preserved. So the town of Menotomy, it's not called Menotomy anymore, actually. Now it's the town of Arlington, but, the town of Menotomy historically is actually where most of the worst fighting actually happens during this battle. And then a bunch of fighting actually happens in Cambridge, too. And there's fighting kind of all the way through what is now kind of like north side, Cambridge, Charlestown, Boston area, before the British actually re-enter into Charlestown proper. And that's kind of when the fighting ends that night. And the fighting is all day long, right? So the Brits are, the first fighting happens at Lexington at around 5:30 in the morning. And then there's a pause for a few hours, and then kind of in the mid-morning there's fighting at Concord, I think around 10, and then around noon they're coming back, and from noon to pretty much sunset, so a few hours, it's just constant fighting that entire time. So thank you so much for watching. Again, I have a video on this topic. Please go check it out. I think it's very thorough and well done. But yeah, have a great 250th anniversary. The next few years here are going to be the 250th anniversary of the war, so expect a bunch of videos in the coming months and years about these historic battlefields from me. Thank you all so much, and have a great day. Goodbye.